Next up in our discussion about community ecology is the idea of pathogens, and this would be really another disturbance, but it's not a disturbance caused by weather conditions or natural disasters. It's a disturbance caused by other living creatures, or perhaps semi-living creatures in the case of viruses. Concept 54.5 says that pathogens alter community structure locally and globally. There is no ecological community on the planet that is not affected by pathogens, and that would include any disease-causing creature, microorganism, viruses, even things that you might not consider fully alive, like viroids, viruses, prions. Pathogens can alter community structure quickly and extensively, and so they would be considered another type of disturbance, although a unique form of disturbance. Lots of examples you can find of where pathogens have a distinct effect on community structure, a dramatic effect on communities. A great example the textbook uses is coral reef communities being devastated by what's called white band disease. It's thought that this disease is caused by a particular type of bacteria, but scientists really aren't sure yet. They're still studying this. But however it's caused, this disease has had a pretty dramatic effect on certain coral communities, wiping out a couple of different species for the most part in the Caribbean area. And this is just an example. You can find all varieties of examples throughout different ecosystems, different types of species, sometimes going extinct, being completely wiped out by a particular pathogen or a particular type of infection. One of the things to keep in mind with pathogens and the flow of pathogens around the world is human activity. Human activities are transporting pathogens around the world at an unprecedented rate. For the most part, there would be diseases in different parts of the world that stayed in those parts of the world. But because human activity travels the entire globe in just a matter of hours, I mean, you can travel from one side of the planet to another side of the planet in a day. That allows for the transfer of pathogens all around the globe, and that has increased some of the danger of these various pathogens wiping out species, affecting different environments. So community ecology is needed to help study and combat these pathogens. Part of what community ecology does is study the effects of, say, human travel and the introduction of different diseases to different areas of the world. One major area of study regarding community ecology is what's called zoonotic diseases, also sometimes pronounced zoonotic, so zoonotic or zoonotic diseases. Zoonotic pathogens have been transferred from other animals to humans. So these are bacteria or viruses that originated in other species but have since moved on to include humans. The transfer of pathogens can be direct, say with direct contact by the original species. Say, for example, if it could be, say, a disease that is contracted directly by interacting with swine or birds or monkeys, or it can have what we call a vector, an intermediate species. Mosquitoes are a great example of a vector, to where you have a disease that passes from one type of species to humans via mosquitoes, and mosquitoes would be considered the vector, or it could be fleas, or it could be any number of other parasites that pass that disease from one creature to another. Many of our most scary emerging human diseases that you see in the news are zoonotic diseases. Think about things like anthrax, Ebola, and Lyme disease. Those are ones that have been around for a while, but in the news lately you've probably heard of swine flu, the H1N1, or the avian flu, the H5N1. These are all zoonotic diseases. They are pathogens that didn't originate in humans but have jumped species from pigs to humans, from birds to humans, something like that. Sometimes direct, sometimes using a vector like a mosquito or something. Here's a good example that you might want to look at. There's a live science leak here that talks about, I think it's a list of like the top 10 zoonotic diseases or pathogens. Kind of scary. There's also a great book. It's actually probably 15, 20 years old at this point, but it was called The Hot Zone, Hotzone, and it was all about the Ebola virus. It's a fascinating book. It's basically a non-fiction book, but it will scare the daylights out of you. So it's called The Hot Zone. Probably, again, like 15 years old, but still a great book to read, a great novel if you want more about this type of thing. So zoonotic pathogens are a very big area of study as far as community ecology is concerned. Identifying the hosts, the community of hosts, and the vectors for a pathogen can go a long way to help prevent disease. So, for example, recent studies identified two species of shrew as the primary host of the pathogen for Lyme disease. So Lyme disease is a disease that gets passed on to humans via oftentimes the bite of ticks. So here you have a tick that has attached itself to a human, and this red bullseye rash is a very common symptom of Lyme disease. Well, Lyme disease is caused, I believe, I'd have to look it up, but I think it's caused by a particular bacteria. That bacteria hosts in a little mouse, a little shrew. And so you might have a tick bite that little shrew. Some of the blood that the tick takes in has the Lyme disease bacteria inside of it, and then that same tick bites you, and some of that gets transferred to you. So the tick is the vector, and the shrew would be the host, and the pathogen itself, the bacteria or whatever it is that creates the Lyme disease, is what's being passed between these creatures. So here's an example of this little shrew, this little mouse-like creature, and this researcher is removing a tick, and they're trying to find the pathway that would lead to humans being infected by Lyme disease. Another good example of this is the avian flu. That's been in the news over the last few years. Avian flu is a highly contagious virus of birds, but it is a virus that has made the jump from birds to humans, so it's a zoonotic pathogen. And ecologists are studying how this has spread around the world. I believe it began in Asia, but has now spread throughout different parts of the world, from Asia to North America. Some of that has been by things like poultry, like farm animals, like chickens, turkey, and the like, but some of that spread has also been by wild migrating birds. So community ecologists might study how has this traveled, how has this disease made its way around the world in an effort to try to control the disease or to get rid of the disease. Here you have a picture of a researcher who's tracking the spread of avian flu through wild bird immigration. So he's tagging this little baby bird, and part of the process that they're doing here is trying to track the movement of birds as they migrate around the world, so they can help kind of track the movement of this pathogen that gets passed by these birds. You may remember a couple years ago when the swine flu was going around and it was in the news. This kind of popped up on the internet and made me laugh. So here you have this little baby who is kissing this pig here, and it says swine flu, how pandemics get started. So it's kind of a fascinating topic to think about, how there are pathogens that jump species from one creature to a different creature, from one species to another, and that's a very important part of studying community ecology. That's it for this chapter. We're going to take a break right there. So we have studied quite a bit of ecology, quite a bit of biology, and we are only one chapter away from finishing up. I'd love to tell you that the last chapter is all happy and good and it's going to give you a warm, happy feeling inside, but it's probably not. The last chapter is about conservation biology and global change, and it talks a lot about some of the various things that humans have done to the global ecology, and unfortunately a lot of that is negative. So we're going to talk about some of those changes that have occurred, and then we're going to talk about what can be done to counteract some of the negative effects that humans have had on the ecology of our planet, and we'll try to wrap things up, and that will be it for Biology 1307. So I know it's been a long haul, especially the entire year for 1306 and 1307, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I hope you can too. We have one more quiz concerning these last couple of chapters, and then we have our final exam, and that will be it as far as our assignments. I did throw in one more slide here that kind of talks about the various types of interspecific interactions. So if you wanted just kind of a quick summary, here's a quick little summary that I found in your notes in your textbook there. And so we'll stop right here. If you have any questions, let me know. Contact me online. We will have an open forum for the final exam, but you could also email me or contact me on the updates page of your specific class page of Schoology or Schoology if you want to. Any way that you need to contact me would be fine. I'm happy to help you and happy to answer. So that's it for now. I'll see you for that very last chapter, chapter 56, and then we'll be done. Thanks. Bye-bye.